So we have, up first, we have Kylie and Jeff, who are going to be, as soon as I wake up my computer, they will be talking, expanding the circle, collaborative story of including QA in the DevOps conversation. So if they want to come out now, I will set them up.
Hi, welcome back. To give us the start things off with your meat coma. So hopefully things go well for us today. My name is Jeffrey Sykes and this is Kylie Schleicher. We've worked together for the last 4 years. We represent 2 separate disciplines, Ops and QA. So today you are seeing the world premiere of a new thing we're calling the Double Ignite. And so that's going to be twice as long, but it will also hopefully be twice as insightful, twice as much fun, and with twice the presenters, in case I already said that before. So we want to tell today a collaborative story. And stories contain certain kinds of elements, right? There's characters, there's setting, plot, conflict, and themes. Those all come together to help try and give us new insight or to help us teach a lesson. And stories often follow a general pattern. There we have the status quo, something happens that challenges that leads to conflict. The characters ultimately have to come to some kind of resolution, and they have to find a new way to move things forward. Now, those stories also generally include themes. Themes are the things that we think about that are below the surface. And one of the beautiful things about stories is that stories often can help us teach new big lessons or give us insights. And so one of the key themes for our story is shared pain. Empathy and sympathy for us are the key motivators for what can allow us to make changes. Pain that is for one person or one team is a lot easier to ignore. Also important to stories is the point of view from which the stories are being told. If you think about DevOps stories that you've seen or that you've heard, how many of them have been from a dev or an ops perspective? What other perspectives have you heard? So today we're going to do a retelling and an extension and expansion of our story, and we're going to look at it from a different point of view. And so I've asked Kylie to help me today, and we are going to be telling the story.
DevOps came into my world innocently enough as an accelerator. Speed is universally understood, where we've all been asked to do more and faster and with higher quality to delight users, keep up pace with the global marketplace, and provide fast feedback on experiments. At the same time, the surface of our solutions have become increasingly more complex with greater integration points, omni-channel verification, and really it's just too great to be confirmed quickly, confidently. Our first CI/CD pipelines were amazing, but it was a lot like testing on sand, where the surface continued to shift underneath you and invalidated your results. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
We focus a lot on tactics, tools, roles, automation, but at the heart, what we're really looking for is a friction-reducing way of working, wherein we have everyone actively involved and delivery-focused. We don't want to go back, certainly. No one wants to go back to manual deploys, where QA receives 1 week's worth of feature code and 1 large drop. We really want to change, but the nature of that change is unclear. And at this point in our story, QA is really viewed as a bottleneck. Interestingly enough, among many DevOps practitioners, even today, testing is still cited as a bottleneck. So we really believe that the solution to this is end-to-end automation. A lot of people would talk about advocating for dissolving independent QA teams. But the challenges of end-to-end automation are made more difficult by the slower evolution of QA tools than those for dev and ops. Quality, after all, is a team sport. It's a component of high-performing teams and a key aspect of everyone's job, where we really see the role of QA as helping to assure the team accepts responsibility for that delivery.
So if the discovery is that quality is a team sport, then how do we get the changes that we need? The need is for a catalyst for that change, and for us, that's shared pain. One of the problems with shared pain is if you have heroes, because heroes can hide pain with their extra efforts. We had QA testers that would work all night or on weekends, and they didn't allow us to understand the true scope of the problems that we were facing. One of the other problems that we have is unintended side effects. Can anyone else put a hand up for that one? So we changed things. We moved pain around inside of the system. We freed ops. We empowered devs, but we also put QA in a bind. Now, we could also ignore the pain. If we ignore the pain, we end up with unstable environments. We end up with broken pipelines, with increased risk, and that leads to an untenable situation where confidence is eroded and destroyed. Another temptation would be to slow things down, to introduce manual steps where we didn't have them before, to go back in the ways that we worked before. But again, that was a temptation that was there, but one that we realized we could not go for. The real thing that we want to do is avoid experiencing the same pain twice. And so when it hurts the most, when you feel like you can afford it the least, that is exactly the time when you have to step off the treadmill, take a moment to pause and reflect, and recognize that you're not alone. When you realize that, you may realize that you are going to have to be part of the solution to someone else's pain, even if it doesn't directly impact you. We have to work together to solve our problems. And for us, that meant creating space. We needed to create space that would allow other people to give us their perspectives, to allow them to offer their solutions. We needed to expand the circle and make that space safe. But even as you expand the circle, you're still going to have to come up with a way to group ideas, to look for patterns, to try to find ways to figure out what is your backlog, how are you going to prioritize and attack that backlog.
Reflecting for us, we found a common enemy of toil. This was mentioned earlier as existing across the entire software development lifecycle between developers and operations, QA, security. It wasn't isolated to within just one role. But toil looks and feels differently to each person and to every team. We found that if we started describing any of our work or tasks as soul-sucking, that was a good indication that that was something we were experiencing with toil. As we expanded on that further, what if we look to use toil as a way to create a shared vocabulary? When we focus on just the boulder that we're trying to carry and push forward, we miss the larger patterns across the organization. Our patterns showed limited use of tools. While this brought us some immediate breathing room where we could begin to fix some of the larger scale problems that we had, what we ended up with was a crowded landscape of loosely cobbled solutions. And the tools, while bringing us quickly to a point of consistency and even some flexibility, were super difficult to scale. We weren't able to really roll wins forward from one project to the next or continue to increase efficiency across iteration.
So there's also other themes that we see in our story. We see new challenges that are coming up when we create and test AR and VR or voice skills. We understand that now that for us, it's going to involve all of us. We also have to deal with pixel perfection and presentation issues. And then sometimes that means we have to help allow testers to manage the flow of work through our systems. Ultimately, what we have to do is adjust our delivery pipelines to include automated quality and security gates as part of our process. We understand now that the code that we use for our pipelines actually expresses what we think is important in software delivery. We also seek to talk to each other and look for other people's perspectives, to look through their lenses, to bring into focus those things that need to change as we make progress. And ultimately, we know that the path is forward, even if that means that we're swimming upstream against the current or sideways. We don't give up, because as soon as you give up and accept the pain, it's game over.
We look to begin now. We know that our tools-based approach was simply not enough, and that we're going to need to automate all of the things that we could automate. And that automation needed to be more sophisticated, with an understanding that both QA and ops would need to more further embrace code. Code, after all, is all the way down. We use pseudocode in specifying for requirements. Code delivers features. Code delivers infrastructure and pipelines. Code verifies quality. Code is really our shared language. In expanding the circle, we're really looking for room and for others to join us in conversation. Without intentionally opening up that circle, we miss the ideas and perspectives of others that we're going to need on our journey to deliver the best work. Even with mountains of challenges, occasional stagnation, incremental progress, and the occasional small win, there's no harm in expanding your circle. You may even end up with a friend.
Thank you.
Okay, you're probably thinking, Tom, you said 5 minutes. Well, that was 2 ignites to make a super ignite. And that is why we had that. So next I'm going to bring Matt out. I met Matt last night, and he is wearing the exact same hat. So, are you ready to begin?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
All right. Hey, everyone. I am Matt Blasinski. I'm a DevOpser from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And yes, I do always wear the pirate hat. So thank you for having me here, conference organizers, for putting this together, and for everyone for being here. So why the title, DevOps, Diving or Death, Choose To? First, I actually need to explain a little bit about diving, or cave diving in particular, as it said in the intro talk. As you'd expect, cave diving is scuba diving in water-filled caves. Now, that's not something humans are designed to do, so we need special skills and equipment to help us do that. The difference between normal scuba diving and cave diving is that normal scuba diving, if there's a problem, you just go straight to the surface. In cave diving, you may be a long distance from the surface, which doesn't allow you to go to the surface. So this means, that you put yourself in a lot of risk to be able to do this. Now, that's not something that, I would normally encourage us to do, and we wouldn't do unless there were ways to mitigate those risks. So how do we do that? So now I'm going to go back to the title for a bit. Talk about something called the constraint triangle. You've probably heard you can have something fast, cheap, or working, but you have to choose two. It's anywhere that you want some things, but there has to be a trade-off. So the problem is, what happens when you need all of the aspects? So to accomplish that, what I say you need to do is you need to add something else that wasn't there before, some new process or some new technology, and that's how you can, get through these. So to us, that's DevOps that we're adding to be able to get things we were bound by before. What DevOps things? So I like the CAMS values: culture, automation, measurement, sharing. I think by adding some of those things, we're able to get through some of the traditional software barriers. Now, I think we talk about automation and measurement quite a bit already. We had some great talks this morning. It's all the fancy, new, pretty exciting tools. So I'm going to skip over that. Also, sharing, we're all here, we're all learning and sharing with each other, so I don't think I need to cover that. But culture, that's what I'm going to focus on. I think that it's really easy to overlook it because it's all around us. We don't even notice it. So with culture, what I like to do is actually look at something else, and maybe we can borrow that back into technology. And that's why diving comes in. Now, in cave diving, it's kind of Murphy's Law. Everything that can possibly go wrong does go wrong. Equipment breaks, people make mistakes. You're in an environment that doesn't want you there, that you aren't supposed to survive in. So it means the most important skill we have is, before we get in the water, it's planning. And I think that's similar in technology, too. I think it's really easy to try to just push things out, but we need to plan what could break, and then what are we going to do when it does break. And then how can we prevent those problems? But of course, there's a balance you have to strike between planning and paralysis by analysis and actually just trying to push things out the door. That means that sometimes you're going to overlook things, and there are still going to be problems. So to me, that's where I really like us to have the automation and technology. It helps us find problems quickly, helps us fix them quickly. We can halt things, we can deploy changes quick. But then the really important part there is to learn from the mistakes so that you can fix them. Another really important culture aspect is communications and trust. In diving, we can't talk underwater, so we have to use hand signals and light signals to communicate. In normal scuba diving, thumbs up means to go up, thumbs down means to go down. In cave diving, it's a little different. Thumbs up means get out of here right now, and your whole team just needs to trust and say, okay, we're going to get out of here. I think that's a similar thing we could do in technology, where if you're a little uneasy about something, if it's not tested, not fully right, you just say, hey, we're going to slow this down, or we might even halt it completely. But the big key is without any blame, without any negative repercussions. So it's actually slowing down a little bit might help fix some problems, prevent some problems, and that lets us have all those constraints because we're saving time and money by not breaking things down the road. So in closing, I don't expect you guys to start cave diving, but I think we can learn from this ourselves. When you're stuck on something, think back to the constraint triangle. What could be added in that actually lets us get past some of the problems we have, before? And I'd say look at your own hobbies and interests and passions. Are there similar problems you see there? Maybe there's similar solutions that you can borrow and you can adapt and imitate for your technology problems. And finally, the one other thing I think we often forget, and that's to make sure we have fun. I think in technology, often we get stuck on problems, we forget why we got into in the first place. But if you look at your hobbies and interests, you're hopefully remembering why you have fun and why you enjoy doing those. So again, kind of if you get stuck on something, think about what you might be able to add in, and then hopefully that'll work. So, thank you again, and thanks to the organizers, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to have Nick come out. All right, Nick. It's kind of hard to follow up with a hat like that.
That's right.
You ready?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Skew DPS has helped several organizations integrate security tools and activities into their DevOps processes. I wanted to share some of the lessons we learned and mention specific open source tools that you can use right now in your own DevOps environment. First, DevOps and security are just right for each other. Why? Because DevOps engineers are smart, they're self-taught, they like tools, and they're good at automating things. To integrate security into the development process, you need all those characteristics. But which tools or processes? Where? And how? Let's start with the development process from one of our projects. What's interesting is that each step has an opportunity to integrate with security tools, but you can't just use any tool anywhere you want. Instead, each step requires the tool to fit specific criteria so it doesn't slow down or interrupt development. First, let's focus on people. Application security training brings awareness of common vulnerabilities and points people at reliable information to fix them. That training can be developed internally using free online information, delivered by an expert through a classroom experience, or through various on-demand options. My favorite resource is the OWASP cheat sheet series because it provides concrete, detailed remediation advice for fixing a variety of vulnerabilities. When writing code, it's important to get security feedback before committing a change. That feedback needs to be relevant, and it must deliver easy to understand remediation advice. Last, it needs to be targeted. Don't start out looking at all vulnerabilities, but rather a slowly expanding subset that really matters. Helpful tools include lightweight static code analyzers like Find Security Bugs or Roslyn and the Microsoft Code Analysis plugin, or identifying out-of-date third-party libraries with OWASP Dependency Check or retire.js. When using a continuous integration server as the authoritative source for a passing build, there are unique opportunities for integrating security tools. You can choose to implement some security gates here, but that doesn't mean you can throw every tool you have at the code. The build needs to be quick. This means you can't run a full dynamic security scan on every build. I've also seen presentations that say you should break the build for security, but should you? I wouldn't at the beginning. Instead, when merging a branch or accepting a pull request, consider logging vulnerabilities to a bug tracker or request the vulnerabilities be fixed before merging that into the master. Many teams also use an artifact repository to store their packaged, ready-to-deploy applications. When a package is promoted from the development repository to staging, teams can choose to include longer-running security tools. This is also the ideal place to log all discovered vulnerabilities. Finally, once software is running on a server, a whole suite of security tools can be run. It's not necessary to run them all, but to choose a subset covering the most important security concerns for the organization. Think about things like patching or fixing high-profile vulnerabilities related to SSL. These tools run asynchronously during the deployment process, and the enabled security rules must be carefully chosen based on their reliability and consistency of their results. Next, when Skew DPS does an assessment, it's very common to find ways to bypass multi-step authentication processes. Often an attacker can enter another's username and then change their phone number or answers by revisiting the enrollment process, effectively bypassing the security control. Automated security scanners can't find contextual, logical, and domain-specific vulnerabilities like that one. Systematic manual security testing from an application security expert is still very important regardless of the security tools you use in a DevOps process. So what does it take to start integrating security tools? First, it's important to understand that the maturity level and development process is different for each DevOps team. Just because one set of tools, processes, and gates worked at your friend's company doesn't mean the same thing will work for you. As an organization, you have to find out which practices the teams hold in common that you can build from. Additionally, the new security activities must be flexible, giving specific minimum standards, but also lots of freedom too. And then adopting security tools requires a lot of upfront work. Some tools generate lots of false positives. Others require tuning to work properly. And most benefit from organization-specific documentation for their implementation and use. This investment requires a service-oriented team focused on the implementation and later support. As an organization, we also don't want to get hacked, but we can't make every application 100% secure. Someone needs to make decisions about how to prioritize developers' time. Security management reporting needs to be integrated into this process to answer goal-oriented questions about whether the organization is spending its resources effectively. Finally, I wanted to encourage you to introduce one security practice into your SDLC this year. Maybe that one item is training, or it could be secure development policies or standards, or perhaps it's a tool. Just start somewhere and keep improving. Thanks for listening to my talk, and feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions or would like to chat about this more. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll take the mic. Thank you. All right, we have one more Ignite to talk through, and it's by Elaine.
Thank you so much. All right, so for my final project at Holberton School, which is the coding school I attended, I actually learned how to use Docker for the first time in order to help others set up the StarCraft 2 machine learning environment so they could get their development environment set up faster. So StarCraft 2, for those who don't know, is a real-time strategy game developed by Blizzard, and you harvest resources so you can do things in a game that help you win. And also, DeepMind, when I'm introducing all these things so they all come together at the end. DeepMind is the AI arm, sort of like research-based arm of Google, and they develop machine learning and like neural network-based things. This is me before I became a software engineer as a teacher. I taught pre-K through second grade, and then ended up becoming a assistant principal at a school where I ended up pushing for blended learning across all grade levels, and actually became my frustrations with software and the ed tech sort of software actually was one of the big reasons why I decided to switch careers and go into software engineering. And so this is me. So like in 2017, that's when I started studying programming. We started with C, in addition to systems engineering and Python. And the way my program works is that you're supposed to you have an end-of-year project. Now, at the same time, at 2017, whenever I first started, there was Blizzard and DeepMind were working in partnership together to develop the StarCraft 2 learning environment. And in May of 2017, I actually started playing StarCraft for the first time. And this is me trying to beat one of our founders, Julian Barbier, who worked with Docker. That comes back to us later. He ended up beating all of us, and was really satisfying for him and really frustrating for me, because if anyone who plays StarCraft knows that this is a Zerg rush. He plays Zerg, which is the worst race ever in that game. And let's see, so then I ended up going, so this is Linus Torvalds. I met him when I went to Open Source Summit, which was really cool, gave him a shirt from my school. Also learned about machine learning and the fact that at this point in machine learning, we're not really at the point where we can make bots that can beat people in Zerg rushes, but we can sort cucumbers. Right after the Open Source Summit was whenever the StarCraft 2 learning environment was released. I tried installing it, couldn't, and ended up being in this dependency hell where all these Python packages weren't installed, and I didn't know about virtual environments yet, and it took me so much time, and I always assumed that it was my fault that I didn't know what was going on, and so what my solution to that was just reading through all the issues, both open and closed, and it took about 18 hours and about 50 tabs open before like I was able to get it set up. And this is me getting it set up on my environment, but this is tied to the local installation of StarCraft 2. So whenever at this point, like, I would, if I wanted to, if the game was, StarCraft would, or Blizzard would push out patches every now and then you wouldn't be able to, and then I wouldn't be able to run any of the models. And I also applied to attend a workshop at Blizzard with DeepMind, and so I got an invitation to attend this workshop, and I was thinking like, well, I really want to show like what I've done so far, and then at that point I pivoted from actually doing anything bot-related to actually improving the development environment setup, sort of like that experience for other developers. So my solution was to use Docker. These are the automated builds that I use like with my GitHub repo, and which actually made it a lot faster for me to like build the image and whatnot. I was able to present the Docker sort of container and everything at the workshop that I attended, and it was really cool because there are these grad students that were that wanted to use it. And then here's my project over here, BotBA, that is listed on this one site. And I'm looking for a job now, and I guess like looking to the future, I want to do Kubernetes because I think that would be really cool to, well, in terms of just like running experiments and machine learning, I feel like that's just a really good framework and for like the next step for my project. Thank you.
All right.